Hello and welcome to part 2 of the tutorial series How to make a sandbox visual novel in visual novel machinery. In this video we'll be creating our first scene, look into how to write a very basic dialogue, how to create choices, and how to create a very basic character. This guide will focus on how to do specific things in visual novel machinery, not on how to write a perfect story for Sandbox. So let's get started. Last time we left off with finished setting up our project settings and setting up the blank project template. Now let's move on to creating our first dialogue. If you are using the blank template, you already have a dialogue created in here called Scene 1. If you want to create your own dialogue blueprint, you can right click in the content browser, go to Visual Novel Machinery and click Dialog Blueprint. There you can now name it something like D_some scene. I prefix it with D underscore to say this is a dialog blueprint. You can also prefix it with the BP or nothing at all. It's just my personal preference to keep everything more organized. So I know if I search for dialogues, I can always just search for D underscore, which will give me all the dialog blueprints I have created. For now, let's delete this one and let's just recycle D scene 1. So now let's open D scene 1. You'll see D scene 1 already has some dialogue created. We will ignore this for now and just delete it. So how does a dialogue blueprint work? Every single dialogue has a dialogue start node. This is basically the entry point to your dialogue. Everything that's connected from here will be executed once the dialogue is started. Just remember as well, a dialog blueprint is also a blueprint, so you can use all the blueprint functions that Unreal has as well in the dialog. But most times you can just use only the visual novel machinery nodes. They should be enough for controlling everything you need in the dialog. It's just if you have special cases that you want to take care of that are not in the plugin, you can use your own created dialog, you can use your own blueprint functions. Now if we would now start this, nothing would happen. So let's add some text in here. So let's just press text and we have a text node. Now if you should not have this tab down here, the Visual Novel Machinery tab, you can always navigate to Window and click on Visual Novel Machinery, which will open this tab for you. If you do not want to use this tab, but use the old or the other way of how to generate nodes in Unreal, you can always right click and search for dialog text, and you should find the node as well. I just prefer using this one because it's a little bit more handy to just directly click the node that I need, which will spawn it next to the last node that was added to the blueprint. Now, this is a dialog text node. Dialog text nodes are basically the essentials of our dialog blueprint. If you want to display text in the visual novel, you will have to use this function. So this node. So basically what it does is you can select a character. We will not be selecting character for now. We will get to that later. And you can specify a text. So let's say we want to say hello world. Great. So now if we would start it up, we would get a text saying hello world. But this is not enough. Every single dialogue also needs to have an AND. So let's not forget to also add an AND node. The AND node also has a field called next dialogue to select the next dialogue that should be played. In general, if you do not set this, this means for Visual Novel Machinery that your game is over, which means it will return you to the main menu. Now that's a lot of talking, let's see all of this in action. So let's press the play button and then let's start the game. As you can see, we have text saying hello world. Now if we press onwards, we move on in the dialogue, but as the last node in our dialogue is the dialogue end node, it means the game is done, or at least the dialogue is done, And also because we didn't specify any follow-up dialog node, it means the game is over, completed, you lost or you won, one of the other, or neither, it's a draw, and we return to the main menu. That's why it was important in the previous tutorial to specify the main menu level, because if you do not specify the main menu level, this traveling back to the main menu will not work. It will just stay in the game. This might be relevant for you if you are using Visual Novel Machinery as a drop-in dialogue system for your RPG, adventure game, point-and-click game, which only has dialogue from time to time. But in our case, we want the game to end when the last dialogue is done. Now, let's get back to our dialogue. We can now extend this and add a second dialogue node, dialogue text node. So let's just copy this one and add a second one. And let's give it a text saying, "This is wonderful." We compile, we save. One thing that I do like to do in Unreal Engine is if I press the three dots next to the compile button, save and compile always, it will always just directly save it whenever I compile it, which I personally prefer, because then if the Unreal Engine should crash for whatever reason, at least my work is not lost. And I generally tend to click compile really often. So that's why I also misuse it, or actually use the compile button also as a save button. So it's 2 for the price of 1. Now, if we start this dialogue again, we should now get 2 entries. One time "Hello World" and "This is wonderful." Quite wonderful indeed. And we go back to the main menu. Now, you might have seen while I was creating the second dialog text node that there are some details here, so that we can specify even more things for a dialog text node. We have the audio section, which is relevant if we want to use voiceovers, which we will ignore for now. Then we have the dialog text part, the character animation, and the pin section. Now let's quickly check out the dialog text. Now, if we, let's have another one. If we change the text justification to right, what will happen? Let's give it "I am a moved text." What will happen if I put it to right means that the justification of the text will be to the right side. So if we play it now, "Hello World, this is wonderful, and I am a moved text." The text is now aligned to the right side and also typewritten from the right side. Now, if you want to move the text to justify the text differently, you can also use the center. And if we compile and save, we start up, we enter the game again, "This is wonderful, and I'm a moved text." Now let's do it again because I clicked a little bit too fast. "Hello World, this is wonderful, and I'm a moved text." It's typewritten in the center of the text box. Now, what other options do we have? We can also say, let's remove this one for now, that we do not want "this is wonderful" to be typewritten. We can tick this, and now, if we start the game, it's like "Hello World" and "This is wonderful." Could be an interesting use case for a dramatic effect. So everything's typewritten and then something scary happens and it's like, bam. Alright, also another one, so let's enable typewriting, is you can have it typewritten faster, so you could change the speed multiplier here. Then we have the character animation tab. This one is currently unimportant to us because we are not there yet with working with characters, so let's ignore it for now. And last but not least, we have the use dialog text pin functionality. Sometimes you might want to generate your own text with multiple variables in it. So you can't do that when wanting to write it in here, because you can't really specify any variables in here, except maybe a character's name, but more to that later on in the tutorial. So we can now say we want to use the dialog text pin. What this does is it removes the text field and gives us an actual pin to work with. Now if we quickly go back and take this text, actually let's just work with this one. Now if we take this text, alright, now if we take this text, now let's do the pin and add it in here, it would result in the same behavior as you can see. In general, I recommend going the route of only using the pin if you want to have variable text. If you just want to put standard text with nothing special in it, just use the normal text field. Now let's remove this. And so what we generally can do now that we have a dialog text pin is we could, for example, use the format text. Now if we again add it in here, same procedure as before, it should still be "this is wonderful." Now let's add some variable input to this. So let's say "this is wonderful" add, and then we need to add a variable field, %0, which adds a field called wildcard called 0. We could also name it something different like time, which is also exactly what I want to do. I want to say "this is wonderful" at the current time. So we could just get the date time now, and we can transform it to a string. For that we can just say to time, or actually time, or actually as time. This will give us a text value back, and we can plug it in here. Now if we start it right now and we start it up and we see "hello world, this is wonderful" at September 16, 2023 at 18:08:08. So keep that in mind when you want to display variable information. For example, maybe down the line you want to display the character's age, character's attributes during the chat, and then you can use this way to display specific variables or values. Now next on the list we want to look at choices. What are choices? Choices are basically something that's quite essential to some types of visual novels, where you give the player options to choose something that they want to do. For example, in our case, we will ask the player, "what's your favorite color?" And then this is the point where we get to a choice. For this case, for this reason, we have a choice node. You can find it down here in the Visual Novel Machinery tab again. Click it, and it will spawn a dialog choice node next to the last generated node. Now, as you can see right here, we do not have anything on the node itself. Everything is directly inside of the details panel. Now let's go through everything in the details panel. The choices is basically the essential part of the node, because here we can define all of our choices. So right now, "what's your favorite color?" We give the player a quite big variation. We let them choose between red and blue. Now the next thing is make choice conditional. If you do so, this would mean that the choice is only displayed if a certain Boolean value is true. Then the choice is image choice. It's there to tell the node that it's using an image widget for the player to display to the player, so that they know or so that they can choose from an image the choice that they want to do. This is very relevant for later down the line when we are going to make a map widget where the player can choose where they want to go in the city. But more to that in a different video. Also then down here we have the image choice widget class, which can only be specified if you tick is image choice. And last but not least, we also have the option is 3D choice. This is relevant if you are currently working with a 3D environment in the background and you want to have give the player an option to choose a 3D object in the background, so they can click on a three-dimensional object in the scene, which will result in the choice being triggered on the dialog choice node. But that's all information for later. For right now, we stick with simple choices with our blue and red. Now, if the player is going to choose blue, we say you chose blue. If the player chooses red, we say you chose red. And then we enter the dialog. We compile and save. We press start. Start game. Hello world. What's your favorite color? Now we have the option between blue and red. Let's take blue. So we get the choice, you chose blue. And the dialog ends again, because the dialog end node doesn't have any dialog specified. Now let's start again, and let's do this whole thing again. What's your favorite color? This time, my preference is with red. So, we get the answer, you chose red. Awesome. Now let's close this. Now, as I've said before, there's also the option for conditional choices. So what you can do now is you can add a conditional choice next. So if you chose, so let's specify it a little more. What subtype of your favorite color? Now let's connect all of that and then connect to the dialog choice again. Let's add a few more options here. So now we have dark blue, light blue, dark red, or light red. And now let's say we make it conditional. Alright, let me just quickly add some text notes here for later. Das up here, this down here. Let's connect it all up. Alright, then let's connect everything to the end of the dialog. So this is dark blue, this is light blue, this is dark red, and this is light red. Now right now, if we disable the conditional for now, we'll just have a simple flow of blue, and it asks you, you chose blue, what subtype of your favorite color, and we get all of them. As you can also see, I did not capitalize some of the letters, so even though it's capitalized in the display here, it will always take the value you have specified here in the details panel. Now we want to make it conditional. So what will we do? First of all, we add make choice conditional. Now you get immediately get some pins here for the Boolean value to decide, or let's say for your condition to decide if it should be available or not. If you leave it like this, and all of them are unavailable, you will run into a little bit of a problem. Because now you chose blue, what's your favorite color? Now it's waiting for you to choose an option, but you didn't say any of the options is actually available for the player, so therefore nothing is displayed, and you basically locked the game because now nothing happens. You can go to the pause menu and go to the main menu again. Now if we only allow dark blue and dark red, for example, we will now see only dark blue and dark red. Same thing if we just tick the top two, we will get only dark blue and light blue. Now we wanna use some conditions for this. So what will we do? In the beginning, we chose the color blue or red. So now let's add a variable in the Dialog blueprint. Remember, this is also, a Dialog blueprint is in itself still a blueprint, so it has the same functionalities. So what we can do is we can save here a variable called chose red, chose blue. Now we pull it in, say a setter, and say yes, we chose red. Or if we chose blue, we get a setter, we tick it, and we chose blue. And now we can connect this to over here, get and a get for chose blue. So if chose blue has been set to true, there will be available. If chose red is set to true, then the red will be available. So now if we start game, we press blue, we get dark blue, light blue. If we choose red, we get dark red, light red. And as you can see, this way you can simply make choices and conditional choices. And now, last but not least, we kind of also want somebody saying those words, because right now, if we start the game, it feels like a narrator is talking to us because there is no name displayed. So let's introduce a character. In this case, let's introduce Bob. So how do we introduce Bob to the game? It's simple. We go to our data folder and open the character definitions. In the blank template, we still already have one character defined. Let's delete this one and add a new one. Let's call this row Bob. It's essential that the row name and the character ID are the same value. If you do not set the value to the same thing, then either the node will not find it, or in-game the game will not find your character. Now let's give this character a name called Bob. So as I mentioned, character ID has to be the same as the row name. And the character display name is the name that's displayed in the game. We also have something called the character display color. This is basically the color of the name in the text box. So let's take a nice light blue. Then we have also other options like the dialog background override. This is relevant if, for example, you want to have a different background for when this character is talking. For now, let's ignore it, but you can use it later on the line. Character description is not used anywhere in the plugin, but you can still set the description here because you can read it here in the table. Or what you can also do is you could, from this data table, take the character description and display it in a custom-made UI that you specifically created for your game. Then we have character image pair motion, character image layers. Those are relevant if you want to display a 2D character during your dialogue. We will look into more of that later on in the next video. Character mesh, character animation is the 3D part of the plugin. So if you don't want to use 2D images but 3D characters and animations, you can use these two fields. And then last but not least, the voiceover definitions and the character character memory definitions. The character memory definitions is for the memory system, which we will get more in detail later, which is basically a system to save variables over more than one dialog. So if one dialog ends, it will still remember the variables you have set in the memory system. Just imagine it like the brain of a character. And the voiceover definitions is there for the audio component of the plugin, if you want to have the character actually talk to the player. Now that we have created Bob, let's go back to scene. You will see we still have the name green circle standing here because we have not closed and reopened the scene. What you can also do to force the regeneration of the nodes is to just press compile. Now it has updated itself and now we have Bob. Now we want to have Bob talking to us. So what we can do is we now select Bob. You see now as well, we get a pop-up for the emotion, which is something that would be specified in here. But we will leave it to none now because we didn't set anything up. So now let's change all of this to Bob so that we have Bob talking to us. Let's move it a little bit down. Add Bob here, add Bob there. Awesome. So now if we save and press play and we start the game, we now have Bob actually talking to us. It's no longer a narrator, it's Bob. Now we again select the color and we see everywhere we have Bob talking to us at all times. So let's save everything we have done right now. Go back to the content browser, go back to the dialogues, and wait for the next video. This is the end of this video. Next video we will be moving on to checking out the memory system so that we can actually configure more things. We will also look into character renaming and actually complete this configuration scene. So that's everything from my side for today. Have a great evening and goodbye.